We have 5 stories in total for you guys today. The first story is posted by you/Mango 123,456 with the title of Restaurant Employee Amuses Himself, Delights Me and My Kids. Yesterday, I decided to take my kids to an international chain restaurant. In this restaurant, the kids' meal comes with ice cream, but you have to serve yourself. That was a problem because there weren't any bowls beside the ice cream machine. So I thought, I know what to do. I'll simply ask an employee for some bowls. And that's just what I did. So he turns to look at the vast array of bowls behind him. Some sauce-sized, some entree salad-sized, and many in between. And we realize that neither of us knows what size the kids' ice cream is intended to be. So he thought, I know what to do. I'll simply ask a manager. And he says, hey boss, what do we put the kids' ice cream in? Without turning around, the boss says a ducking bowl. What do you think? Yeah, but what size of bowl? The boss, with his inimitable charm, tact, and grace, says just ducking, give him a bowl. The employee looked back at the bowls, and then I saw him get a big grin over his face. I apologize about that, sir. I think it's probably these ones, he says as he hands me 2 of the largest bowls they have in the restaurant. Practically giggling with glee, my children were similarly delighted. The manager walked by when we were halfway through and made a noise like a startled opossum, but said no actual words. Definitely going back there. Onto the second story written by you/Earthshaker 495. I demand to be put in a seat that is able to recline. A few years ago, I was on a flight from Laos to Singapore. Takes 16+ hours. I'm a tall dude, around 6'3", 190 centimeters, so I don't fit very well in economy class seats. On most planes, my knees are often very close, or right up against the seat in front of me. This makes it impossible for the person in front of me to recline their seat, which usually isn't a problem. Once the person in front of me sees how cramped I am in those tiny seats. However, for this particular flight, the man in front of me was not having it. He tried to recline his seat, but couldn't because my legs were there. He turns around and sees what's happening, and asks me something along the lines of, do you mind letting me put my seat back? I respond with, I wish I could, but I physically can't. I'll do my best to give you as much space as I can, but it won't be much. At this point he starts to get angry, and just starts pushing as hard as he can back on his seat. Needless to say, this was not particularly pleasant for me. I ask him to please stop, and he says, I'll stop when I can put my seat back. I decide I'll just wait him out. He'll eventually get tired. After about 10 minutes, 15 minutes of this, he calls a flight attendant over and proceeds to demand a new seat. The flight attendant tells him there are no available seats, and he will have to deal with it. He demands to speak to the pilot, so the flight attendant goes up front to talk to the cockpit. Keep in mind that, throughout this, he is still pressing with all his might against my knees, with only short breaks, to yell at the flight attendant. After a couple of minutes, the co-pilot, he wanted to speak to the pilot, and wasn't happy about this, comes back and tries to explain to the man that he can't change seats because there are no other coach seats free. The man continues to demand a seat that is able to recline, give me an upgrade, this is unacceptable. Making a scene, etc. The co-pilot finally gives in and says while looking at the man, sir, would you like to sit up in business class? The man stands up and mutters something similar to ducking finally, to which the co-pilot responds, sir, sit down. I wasn't talking to you. He turns to me and repeats, how would you like a seat in business class? I have, to this day, never seen someone as furious as the man as I walked past him to my new business class seat with free drinks. Onto the third story shared by you/The Romper. Was told to actually read the policy, so I did. I work for an office and we have an 8-week busy season with mandatory overtime. 12-14 hours divided by day. During this time, the company agrees to reimburse us for dinner, up to $13 divided by meal. We just have to submit a claim with our receipts at the end of the busy season. Food options around my work aren't great, so I usually brought my dinner from home. But sometimes I was too tired to cook after a long day, so out of the 8 weeks, I purchased maybe 10 meals. 3 of those meals I spent $13.50, going 50 cents over the limit. This resulted in a whopping $1.50 overage, which my manager said it was no big deal, and that I could include on my expense claim. He signed off on it and everything. A few days after I submitted my report, head office emailed me saying they rejected my expense claim and that I could resubmit. After I removed the $1.50 overage, I wrote back saying my manager was fine with the $1.50 overage and even signed off on it. And they responded by telling me that they do not allow overages under any circumstances, that the $1.50 must be removed or they wouldn't approve any of my meal expenses. They ended their email with the advice that I should actually read the company policy next time. Fine, they were right and I was wrong. So I decided I'd read the policy very thoroughly before redoing my expense claim. Yes, the policy clearly stated a $13 divided by maximum on purchased meals. Oh, and what's this? The policy also allows a $10 per diem for meals you bring from home. I very happily removed the $1.50 overage and added an additional $300 for the 30 meals I brought from home. I should read the company policy more often. FYI, if you're wondering whether I got paid the $300, and the answer is yes. Many are suggesting the person was sincerely trying to help me out, but I'm not 100% sure because they were so snippy in their email. Also, when we were emailed the meal policy, at the beginning of busy season, there was no mention of the per diem. And no one else in my department knew about it. Either way, I made sure to thank them, just in case they were being sincere. And I was just too jaded to see it. On to the fourth story shared by you/BBQ Lunch. Can't you just unload around me? So this happened earlier today, and was too perfect to not share with you guys. I work in construction as the foreman for a new house build. The location is kinda strange. The house is 250 feet up a hill, via a footpath only. All of our materials have to come up this footpath by hand. It's a pain in the butt to manually carry. Quite literally. An entire house up this hill. One of our saving graces is having the 2 parking spots on the street at the bottom of this hill marked with official no parking signs. Unfortunately, there is an elementary school about half a block away, and the parents of children seem to regularly, at least twice a day, think it's okay to park in our spots. Now, I consider myself a reasonable person, so if someone is parked in the spots and we don't have a delivery or a need to park a truck, I will let it go. If we need the spots and there's someone parked there, however, I will ask them to move nicely. And most of the time they do so immediately, until today. I get a phone call from the lumber delivery truck that is en route to our location. He says he'll be there in about 2 or 3 minutes. I let him know I will meet him at the street and make sure he has space to park. He's carrying all of the material to frame the roof of our house, which is a lot of really big lumber, and will take easily an hour to bring up the hill. So naturally, I didn't want him parked in the middle of the street with his hazards on for an hour, when we have a perfectly good parking spot for him. As I begin my trip down the hill, I notice there is a school parent sitting in her car idling. Assuming she's just waiting to pick up her child, I walk up to her car and politely let her know that she is parked in a no parking zone and we really need her to clear it to park a delivery truck. She scoffs at me and rudely states back, "I'll just be a few minutes and your truck isn't here. Take a chill pill, dude." Before I can respond, a giant lumber truck comes around the corner and I wave to him and then gesture towards him to the woman in the car, who has now put her window back up to ignore me. I put on my best customer service smile and wave at her through the window. She put it down halfway and angrily shouts, "What?" By now the truck has pulled up alongside her car, and I politely ask her again, with a stronger tone of voice, to move her vehicle, reminding her that she is illegally parked in a tow-away zone. Then she gives me this wonderful idea. She says, "Can't you guys just unload around me? Jesus, it's not that hard." I give her another smile and walk away, a brilliant plan forming in my head. I instruct the delivery driver to park as closely to her as possible and block her in with the porta potty that is at one end of our reserved spots, and the parked car that is parked just adjacent to our spots on the other end. He smiles because he immediately gets what I'm trying to do and proceeds to expertly block this lady and her car into a little to parking spot jail. We unstrap the lumber and my guys begin humping material up the hill. Meanwhile, I call the police parking enforcement to let them know the situation. At this point in time, I wasn't trying to get her in trouble. I just wanted a record of why we were blocking part of the street, so we don't get in trouble with the city. The very friendly traffic officer lets me know that she can be there in about 30 minutes and deal with the situation for me. Wonderful. As we continue to unload lumber, the child of the parent shows up, and wouldn't you know it, Mom is just now realizing that the lumber truck is parked so close she can't get out of her driver door. To meet her kid, she awkwardly clambers across the inside of her car and stumbles out the passenger door, shooting glaring looks at me and the truck driver in the process. She loads her kid into the back and then begins to realize that she has no way of leaving. She comes storming up to myself and the driver and states, "I'm in a big hurry, you need to move your darn truck right now so I can go." Before I can respond, the driver gets a grin on his face and says, "Ma'am, in order to unload the lumber on the truck, we had to unstrap it, and per our company policy, I'm not allowed to move the truck with any unsecured load on it. Sorry." This sends her into near aneurysm levels of blood pressure. Meanwhile, I can barely contain my laughter. "Screw your policy, I have somewhere to be," she barks back at him. At this point, with impeccably convenient timing, the parking enforcement officer shows up and parks behind the truck. She doesn't see the officer arrive, and while the officer is still getting out of her vehicle, I just casually say, "Can't you just pull out around it? It's not that hard." With the biggest poop-eating grin I've ever had, I watch as she realizes that I just used her line on her. "Screw you," she yells and storms back to her car and angrily clambers back in through the passenger door and into the driver's seat. At this point, the officer is walking up to myself and the driver before she can even introduce herself. The mom in the car slams it into reverse and stomps on the gas, crashing into our porta potty and knocking it over, and then throws the car into drive and tries to mount the curb and drive on the sidewalk. The officer, driver, and I are staring in disbelief as she gets halfway over the curb and gets stuck. I can hear her screaming obscenities over the idling truck from inside her car. The officer promptly walks up to the door of the car and orders her out. My favorite part of the entire thing is watching her face go to shock as she realized she just did all of that in front of a police officer. She gets slapped in cuffs as the parking officer calls for a second unit, and she is promptly Saturday on the very curb she tried to drive over. She sits on the curb yelling to the now-to officers about how we told her she could stay there and that we never asked her to move. The traffic officer responds that she was the one who was originally called when she first refused to move and that she already knows what's going on, while myself and the driver are giving a report to the second officer. My guys finish moving the remainder of the lumber, and the driver finishes his statement and takes off to go back to the yard. By the end of the ordeal, she was arrested, charged with child endangerment. Her kid was in the back of the car the whole time. Reckless driving, destruction of property, the porta potty, and driving on a suspended license. On top of all that, she also got her car towed. The kid went home with his grandma, and she went to spend some quality time in a cell. I never expected her to actually heed my advice to just pull out around it, but I think next time she'll probably think twice about parking in a tow-away zone if she ever gets a license again. TLDR, rude lady parks in construction site reserved parking, asks us to unload around her, so we park blocking her to do so. Gets mad when she now has no way out, crashes into our porta potty and tries to mount the sidewalk. Gets stuck and got arrested by an officer who was on scene, and all with her child in the back seat. On to the final story shared by you/Alabastri. Ex-girlfriend wants to cut off our electricity. No problem. I was living with my girlfriend and a roommate, and we split the cost of every bill evenly, even though each bill was in one person's name. Well, that was the idea, but I naively helped my girlfriend pay her part of the bills. I paid completely for most of them. The rent was in my name, the electricity in my girlfriend's, etc. Well, I eventually got tired of her crap, arguments, smelly Goebbels, not doing chores, and we broke up. It was messy. She took ages to move out, making sure to mooch every penny she could before leaving. When she left, I immediately started a new electricity account in my name. A week later, I got a letter of confirmation in the mail, but I also received the electricity bill for the last 3 months. My ex was living with us. I opened it without thinking. We couldn't even pay it if we wanted to, because the bill was in her name. I shot her a text. Yo, you got the electricity bill in the mail. It's $120, so come pick up $40 from each of us. X, where's the other $40? We agreed I wouldn't pay bills after I move out. As if she did before. You were still living here for the time period of the bill. X, this is B's, I'm not going to pay a thing. We had an agreement. Well, you can come over to get our part, or you can pay it alone. X, the way I see it, you can either bring the $120 to my place, or have fun in the dark law. You got me there. At this point I realized that she doesn't know I started my own account with the electricity provider. She thought that by refusing to pay, the provider would cut our lights. Good way to mooch another $40 from us, right? But that's not quite what happened. A few weeks later, I received another letter from Alec, company with her name on it. Probably a late payment warning. I sent her a text to tell her, and she responded, "Lol, why are you so desperate to talk to me? You know what you have to do." Another letter came in for her. This one was probably late fees. I have to guess, because I never opened them. I messaged her and she said, "I thought I told you to never talk to me again." As you wish, ma'am. More letters arrived, but from a new address. I googled the new sender's address and found that they were debt collectors. Scary stuff. It's too bad I couldn't say a word to her. Now about 2 or 3 months later, I received a phone call from my ex. And I'm greeted by what the F%. See, these people are calling my parents' house. I've got all these late fees by debt collectors. I told her if she wants our part of the bill, she knows what to do. Realizing that she had no other choice, she caved and came for the money. My roommate and I didn't give her a cent toward late fees, and I probably looked so ducking smug giving her my money. For the last time. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.